Welcome to Failing for You, where I'll fail so you don't have to, or even better yet, so you can too. Hey everybody, it's Jordan Yates here, your host of Failing for You. Welcome back to my podcast. I'm so happy that we are already on episode 2. This has been so much fun and I just appreciate every single listen. So, what are we talking about today? Today's episode is going to be another thing that I've recently experienced and would like to share my journey with you all. And that is how to choose a podcast topic / genre. Now, I'm not just talking about your every other episode here and there. I'm not talking about episodes. I'm talking about your entire podcast, like going into it, how you want to pick your genre and something that you feel like sticking with. For me, this was hard because I'm a person that enjoys talking. I knew that having a podcast is something I would enjoy and it would be a really good extension of my other industry social media, such as my YouTube channel and my LinkedIn. But I didn't know exactly what I wanted to talk about. There's this pressure of having to be original and having to be meaningful while also kind of interesting and entertaining. So I struggled with this a little bit at first and had a few failures along the way. And I would like to kind of teach you guys the steps that I took to eventually achieve the success of creating a genre / topic for my podcast, which I hope it's a success. I'm happy with it. And hopefully enough people are happy with it too to listen to it. If not, it looks like I'll just be talking to myself every week. So I'm going to share with you all 4 tips that I found on the internet, which I used to apply to my process of choosing a topic. So let's just get right on into it with number 1. This is first and foremost what you want to think of and ask yourself, who is your audience? Crickets, crickets, crickets. Yes, guys, this is a big question, okay? Like, ideally, when someone is tuning into your podcast, who do you think is listening to it? Is it your mom? Is it your family? Is it your fantasy football league? Is it your coworkers? Is it industry CEOs or maybe hobby enthusiasts? Like, when you're recording on the mic, who do you think that you're talking to? Now for me, I have more of my platform, I would say, on LinkedIn. In LinkedIn, I have a really awesome community of manufacturing and automation people, as well as some other engineering related disciplines, plus a little bit of oil and gas. So ideally, given that that's the place where I know the most people and have the most reach, I would assume that my audience is going to be a majority of those people. So I wanted something to be relatable to them, but I also wanted to choose a topic where maybe my mom can listen and not be bored to death because I'm not talking about differential equations or something, which I'm not knocking on DiffyQ. I actually had a good time with that, and do not make fun of me for saying that. But what I'm trying to say to you is define your audience. Figure out, like, what are their needs? What are they going to gain by listening to this podcast? Is it simply just to entertain them? Is it going to make their 30-minute drive to work a little more enjoyable? Is it like a really like niche podcast where maybe it's like for bird watchers and only bird watchers? Like, is that all you want, to be really in that specific niche? Like, that's something you need to consider. So for me, I wanted it to be a bit more broad, but with the main focus of my audience being the manufacturing, engineering, energy sort of community that I have on LinkedIn, because those are the people I interact with a lot and I honestly enjoy some of the most. But hey, if my friends listen to this, maybe they can actually get something out of it too. So that's tip number 1. Who is your audience? Or I should say question. Question number 1, define your audience. Next, what are you personally interested in? Okay, guys, so there's a difference between regular hobbies and hobbies that you could actually talk about for endless episodes and have something useful to say every week or every month. I guess it really depends on how frequently you plan on coming out with episodes. For me, I decided that like something I'm interested in, which I get made fun of for occasionally, is I love a good self-help book. I know that word is a bit like whatever, self-help. It's kind of nerdy-ish, or people who are really into it are really into it and they're like, oh my gosh, yes, self-help. That is the stuff. That is what we're into. But yeah, I loved books like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That book, I swear, changed my life. Maybe I'm too impressionable, but I enjoy things where I can listen to an audiobook or a podcast and I feel like I learned something. I feel like I gained some perspective and am able to take that, what I learned, and apply it to my life. That, or something else I also personally enjoy digesting, is entertaining podcasts. So if it's just silly stories or I don't know, pretty much, yeah, I guess it's silly stories or self-help. I really like things that have a good anecdote and can take me through their personal experiences. So this tip number 2, or question number 2, what are you personally interested in? I've applied that by choosing the Failing For You podcast, where I decided I wanted to share my personal journeys of how I've gone through many routes to success and the steps I took to getting there. Because I think a lot of times there's this mentality on the how-to process. They say how to do X, Y, Z, and they really emphasize how to do it right. But they never really talk about how to bounce back when you do it wrong. So for me, I was always raised, do it right the first time or don't do it at all. So I had this horrible anxiety around taking action because I did not want to do it wrong. So I'm like, I am just better off not doing it at all, or just avoiding it or procrastinating as long as possible rather than doing it and failing. Because gosh, that would just be the end of the world. Like, I used to see it, failure is so black and white, and I wanted to stigmatize that. I wanted to stigmatize the word failure, and I want to normalize it as just an important step of the learning process. I think that something that I would say is my special like edge that I have is resilience. I have built it in many, many ways and forms, but I joke and call myself a fearless failure, and that's because I know that if I set a goal that's really high and I go after something that's challenging, because that's just who I am, that's what I like to do, that even if I have all the steps to get there, if this goal is really high or really outrageous, or even, hey, a normal day-to-day task, there's a really big chance that I'm gonna fail along the way. Now, I could fail and give up, or I could just not try at all and think, well, it seems kind of hard. But I've adapted this thought process of how to fail methodically. So don't just fail and say, think you'll intuitively learn from it, because you might. But what you need to do is go into something understanding that failure is an option if you're willing to take that and learn from it. And I think I'm very particularly talented at that. So I thought, hey, I want to have a podcast where I can tell people about things that I've tried, I've succeeded at, but the whole in between and the how-to steps, I failed a few times. And I want to be brutally honest about my trials and errors and my accounts and stories of how I got to where I am, or maybe, just a simple story here or there, maybe how I fixed something, or how I broke something and that turned into a lesson and it was eventually a success. Even more ideally though, I would say that my goal is to have the ability to bring guests on my podcast. So I want to be able to bring successful people who I think have very interesting stories of success and learn from how they failed. Now, this is going to be a bit selfish for me, honestly, because like I said, I love a good story, and I am not going to pass up the chance to talk to other successful people in my industry or around my industry that I can learn from. Because I think that perspective is such a vital thing that we're all constantly reaching for. And we all think we know it all, and our parents will always tell us that we don't. And they're right. And you know what? They don't know it all either. I think the first important step of any journey is being aware of when we're incompetent. As they say, competent conscious incompetence. So we know that we don't know things, all right? And a lot of times I'm very consciously incompetent. And I know to get to the point of competency, I'm gonna have to fail. So I want to bring on some guests and really awesome people that can teach me and can teach my guest their paths to success, how they failed, and even more importantly, how they bounced back. So I thought this would be an interesting concept because, like I said, in step 2, what are you personally interested in? And this kind of goes with who is your audience. I think that if I am able to structure this in a way that I'm genuinely enjoying the conversation with the guests I bring on or the stories I tell just from me to you, then my guests would probably like it too. And that's kind of the idea is, would you want to listen to the podcast you're making? Like, who would? And how do you produce something that is interesting to them? So that's step 2. What are you personally interested in? Answer that question and think about it. Okay, so next, number 3, what makes you different? You know, we're told by many people in our lives how special we are. And then you go out into the real world and everyone tells you you're not special. So there's like this whole sort of mixed messaging signals of you're amazing, also you're terrible, also you're great, also you're not, you're normal, you're special. It's up to you to write your own story and decide, are you going to be someone who can create a difference in the space that you want to make a podcast in? So how are you different? How are you going to stand out in the other podcasts that are so similar? Like maybe you have a podcast on like another self-help topic. How many people are doing the same exact thing? Now, maybe they have a very similar topic, but they're not you. They don't have your life experience. They don't have your perspectives. They don't have the things that you've been through, the knowledge that you have. So you need to get in touch with yourself and look inward and say, what makes me different? Can I make a podcast with the same topic as someone else, but can my podcast bring an entirely different meaning and experience to listeners? So I would say for me, something that makes me a little bit different in this space would be, 1, the obvious, I am a female engineer. There's not a whole lot of us out there, but there is enough to where there's a really awesome community that I've joined. Something else that makes me different, I would say, is, like I said, my resilience and my lack of fear towards failure, but also my very analytical mind that allows me to process these failures and create a methodical way to get to success. I don't just fail willy-nilly. I like to actually, take into account, like, what are the factors that caused me to fail? What can I do differently to achieve success next time? Or how do I want to define these goals of success? So I would say I'm a bit of a pattern interrupt in my industry, and I definitely stick out a little bit simply for the fact of being a female engineer. And I think that I bring some interesting perspectives, but at the end of the day, like, that's not the only thing that makes me different. Like, there's plenty of girl engineers out there. What makes me different are my personal experiences, the people I know in their personal experiences, which I'm so excited to bring on some awesome guests soon. Like, I cannot wait. I just ordered a second microphone yesterday, and I'm really hoping that it's going to work with my sound software. So we'll see. But yeah, why, or should I say what makes you different? And why did you specifically need to make this podcast? That's question 3. Why you? Why is it not a topic that you could hand off to someone else and sell your idea and say, here, you do this? Why you? Think about it, okay? I told you why me. So, and the funny thing is I'm trying to not come off as like, oh, I'm so great. I know all these things. Guys, no. I just think that I have a good idea. I think I could execute it well, but in the spirit of failing for you, there's a chance it flops. But if it does, I'm just gonna keep trying and putting myself out there until I find a way to make it work. And that's my resilience. I would say something too that helped me build that resilience would be my Oh goodness, one of my first jobs when I was 16, I had a lot of jobs in high school, was I was a cashier at JCPenney. Now, I don't know if you know this, but if you are a cashier at most retail stores, there is an incentive to sell as many credit card applications as possible. For me, I was very, very good at that because I did not mind being told no. You would get like an extra $1 or $2 on your paycheck, and then some days you would even get an extra $1 in cash. Now that was a game changer for when you're making $8 an hour, an extra $2 per yes. Oh baby, I can make an extra $30 a shift easily. So when you are playing the numbers game of sales and you have to be told no, I don't know, 40 to 50 times per single yes, you build thick skin, all right? So maybe you're afraid of failure and you haven't built your resilience. Go get a job at JCPenney and sell some credit cards. That'll do it for you. Or something like online dating, that's plenty of rejection there, or just any sales job in general. You will go through the ringer of rejection. But you know what? Just remember, it's not always about you. You just have to think, what are their needs? Why are they saying no? It's probably not even about you. Unless everyone says no to you forever, then maybe look in the mirror and see what you're doing wrong. Maybe it is you, but I'm not one to say. I don't know. So yeah, those are first 3 questions / things to consider. Number 4. Okay, so this is a very interesting one, and I don't know. I have a lot of conflicting feelings on this. The question is, can your podcast be monetized? So that's interesting for many reasons, because a majority of the forums I read through when I was about to start my podcast was, don't you dare even think about monetizing it because they're going to be able to tell that it's not genuine and you don't care and blah, 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 blah. All right. And then I came across this other article of things to consider when making your podcast topic and can it be monetized? That's up to you. If you are purely doing this because you just love talking about whatever you're talking about, or you just don't need the money, you don't care about money, or guys, this is just really a super duper hobby, then maybe don't consider that question. Just talk about what you want to talk about every week and go about your life. Now, if you are someone who thinks one day this is something that I can monetize, this is when you need to ask yourself, can this topic or genre be monetized? Now, for me personally, I hope so. My goal is to have, sponsorships at some point of manufacturing brands or automation type companies, or people who just want me to, do a 30-second ad, mentioning them, shouting them out. Because like I said, a majority of my listeners, I'm pretty sure, are coming from my LinkedIn community. So ideally, my ads would be more geared towards them. So maybe it's about a robot, or maybe it's about some circuit breakers or some wire splicers or whatever, what have you. Ideally, yeah, I would love the ability to monetize my podcast. I'm so fresh in that I don't see that happening anytime soon, but if you're listening and you'd like to sponsor an episode, reach out to me. You can message me on LinkedIn or email me at failingforyoupod@gmail.com. So I'm open to it, but I also feel like I need to get myself in a position first to where I have something that people want to pay to have their ads on. So I'm currently in the stages of building my brand, working on my YouTube channel, my LinkedIn, and obviously now the podcast. So sure, ideally, monetizing would be super duper cool. And I think that I have the type of podcast that could do that. I do see myself having the ability to have spaces for meaningful ads on here. But like I said, it's early days for me. And if monetizing is something that you do not care about, guys, that is fine. If you just want to do something for the heck of doing it, knock yourself out. More power to you, and you should absolutely do that. It is just step number 4 / question number 4 of things to consider when you're choosing a genre. And that is, like I said, can it be monetized? Now, one of the articles I read I found to be very interesting. It was some ideas of genres that you can do. And I like this a lot because sometimes when you're trying to come up with a new idea, you're just like, okay, I want to have a podcast. Oh, I don't know how. That was me. That was how I felt at first. I struggled, like I said, to kind of find a place to where I didn't feel like I was pigeonholing myself too much and that I would have room to grow and the option for specific yet also expandable audiences. So in this list, I have some ideas that I wrote down. So I'm going to take a look at my notes and read to you guys some things I thought were general enough that you could use if you wanted to start the brainstorming process of choosing your own podcast/genre. Or sorry, should I say podcast topic/genre. So the ideas are, first and foremost, talk about your favorite topic. Now, this was a tip I think I gave in my last episode when I was talking about how to start a podcast. Now, this is a really good tip of like an idea because, like I said, you want to enjoy what you're talking about. So if you have a favorite topic that you think you can talk about every single week or every month or every other week or however often that you're dropping your episodes, that would be like kind of your go-to idea. Now, if your topic is really niche, or niche, I never know how to say that word, niche, whatever. If your topic is very specific, think to yourself, is this what I want to continue talking about? Like, how long has it been your favorite topic? Is it something that will continue to be your favorite topic? Or do you think, I've liked this for a few weeks, like I'm into it right now, maybe I won't like it a year from now? Think about the future a little bit and think, a month from now, 6 months, a year from now, will it still be your favorite topic? By all means, go for it. Another idea was keeping people informed of political events, or, I'm not so political, more just like what celebrities are up to or something like that. So current events. This is interesting to me because I am personally very bad at this. Now, I feel like there's always so much going on in the news and so many different angles that people go at, and there's a lot of propaganda out there. So I struggle to filter through the news and have a trustworthy source of someone that I think is good to listen to. So I know that when you find a podcaster or news channel that will continuously talk about current events and they're a source that you trust, or if you can become that trusted source, that is an excellent way to start. So I would say if you are someone who enjoys staying up to date on political events or any current events, then that could be a really good topic genre for you. Like, go for it. And let me know if you do, because I love listening to those kind of podcasts. Okay, next, industry news. So you could share industry news. So for example, if I wanted to really be a bit more niche, I keep saying that word because I don't know how to say it correctly, niche. I'm sorry, guys. If you want to be very specific in your industry, which some industries have a lot going on. Like if I just wanted to talk about the manufacturing industry, I would have endless things to talk about. Now, the reason that I don't do industry news, which I'd love to, but the company I currently work for, part of my job description there is keeping them up to date on what's going on in the industry. And that gives us a competitive edge, more or less. It's a very light one, but it's good to know. So for me, that would be something that's sort of crossing the line into my actual job. And I don't want to do that because I work for a manufacturer and I love my job. Like I love my 9 to 5. Not many people could say that, but guys, I genuinely love my job and I wouldn't want to do anything that jeopardizes that. So I would say if it's industry news you want to share, just be careful of where you are in your position and that it's something that you can share without hurting your company or your position that you're in by giving away like any competitive intelligence. So be careful of that. But people who do share industry news, I find to be very interesting because once again, rather than having to look through a bunch of different news sources, you can just go to one trusted source and you can become that source of industry news in your industry. So yeah, it's a good topic. Another thing is interviewing people. So some people's entire podcast structure is based off of the interview format. I love interviews because I just love the banter. I love the back and forth. And that's why I want to make it part of my topic style. And I want my topic of failing for you to be something that's applicable to interview people with. But I didn't want to be solely based on interviews because I'm someone who likes to be self-sufficient. And as much as I love collaborations, I don't want to have to worry about collaborating weekly. Like this week, I'm busy and it's easy for me to record this at the end of my workday and get everything I need to say on video, on the audio recordings, and get it out there. I don't want to have to rely on like every single week bringing somebody on, but that can be an angle or a topic that you do for your podcast. If you're someone who has the time or the social battery to do that, that would be awesome. That is an angle. The last topic that I'll share that I thought was interesting was doing day in the life stuff. Like day in the life of an engineer, day in the life of a sales engineer, day in the life of an astronaut. If any of you are astronauts, if you are, kudos to you. That looks like a hard job. But day in the life of whatever your life is. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. Maybe you're a stay-at-home dad. Maybe you're a dog walker. Guys, like sometimes people just find it entertaining to learn more about certain lifestyles, whether that is based on your personal life or your industry life or your professional life. Whatever that is, it is interesting to do day in the lives. And that's something I also enjoy. I think I prefer those more in YouTube style just because I like to see what's going on too, but I still think it's a valid podcast topic. But yeah, so that is everything I have on tips and ideas for questions to ask yourself if you're trying to determine what podcast topic / genre you want your new podcast to be in. Just to recap, tip / question number 1 is, who is your audience? What are their needs? Are you trying to entertain, educate, etc., etc.? Number 2, what are you personally interested in? Take that into account. It is very important. Number 3, what makes you different? And why did you specifically need to make this podcast? Number 4, can it be monetized? This is a 50-50 of if this applies to you or not, but it's definitely something to consider. So those are all my tips. Sorry, I see another sip of water. Those are all my tips. Something I would say, I always like to try to share a little anecdote on how I've failed and learned in the process of sharing each episode with you guys. Something that I have learned is that I say like too much. I use too many filler words. So I tried to practice a little bit better this time. That's not specifically related to the podcast topic today, but just had to throw that in there since typically at the end I like to do a segment on questions, lessons, failures, etc. But no one's written in yet because I've only had like 30 people listen, which shout out to all 30 of you. I love you and appreciate you. But yeah, that's just something I realized that I did a bad job at last time. So I'm trying to be more conscious. Hopefully this time it's a little bit better. We'll see. But as for how I've failed and learned while choosing a podcast topic / genre, you should see my notes app. It's so long of so many different ideas I had. And every time I felt like I did something original, I would search something out there and realize, oh, somebody else is already doing this and they're doing a good job. I don't want to compete. And I got really defeated a few times because I'm like, I do want to do this, but I don't know how to do this. And so then I'd take a few days off and I would think, okay, like, do I really want to make a podcast? Like, that's like extra time. And I got to the point where I thought, maybe I'll just stick with YouTube and LinkedIn. And then I was telling myself, no, this is literally like, you have to be this example that you want to put out there. And then I thought to myself, we could talk about failure. And then I looked up all these podcasts about failure. And then I thought, how can I market this to where it doesn't just sound gloomy, doomy, depressy? Oh, we're just talking about failing. How can I put a positive spin on this and make it something that is something worth listening, that's a bit self-helpy, a bit interesting and can use as a way to network with more people in my industry. And that's how Failing for You was born. I thought, hey, I'll fail so you don't have to. Because you know what? I'm a person who does not mind a little bit of failure here and there because I know how to learn from it. And once that kind of clicked, I was sold. I had to make it. I found that my name, Failing for You, was original, and I was like, that's it, we're gonna record. And when I went to record the intro, it took me like 50 tries because I was like, how do I summarize in a minute or less what this podcast is going to be about? And I failed so miserably. I sat there on the couch, I was so pissed off that, sorry, I don't know if that's kind of cursing. I told myself, like, I want to start an episode now because I want to rant about how bad I'm failing at making a podcast intro. But then I thought, no, I can't do that right off the bat because they're just going to think this is a podcast about complaining. And so I went back and forth. And finally I sat down and I said, hey, this is Failing for You. This is Jordan and we're going to learn. And I thought, hopefully I'll get enough episodes out there sooner or later that if the introduction's bad, it'll be glossed over, or I can always go back and redo it. So that was my snippet of failure/struggles that I had in getting my genre out there, because it's really hard to say all that you want to say and encapsulate an idea in less than a minute. Or at least for me, I'm a very wordy person and I am a little ADD, so I struggle to make my points clearly sometimes, and I'll trail off, and then all of a sudden I'm like, this makes sense in my head, but does it make sense to anybody else? And then I listen to it over and over, and then by then I'm desensitized to it, and I have absolutely no idea if this is good or not. So I thought, you know what? This is going to be a tried and true Failing for You moment. We're going to put it out there. We're going to let it see how it does. And if it fails, or if people are asking, what the heck is this? Then we're going to know this is the time to learn from it. So that is currently my process with my episodes. But nonetheless, I hope you didn't lose confidence in me as I was very honest about my steps of going through this. But that is all I have for today. Once again, I have a link in the show notes of where you can go and submit questions, or you can so we can actually start that segment of failures, lessons, and questions. Please submit something because I want to hear from you guys. I want this to be interactive. So do me a solid and I'll do you a solid, and it could be anonymous or we could shout you out. It's up to you. But that is all that I have for today. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you made it this far, this episode was a little bit longer. I appreciate all of you, and you're my reason to keep on doing this and keep putting content out there. So in the meantime, I'm your host, Jordan Yates, and I'll be failing for you.